It's June 19th, 2018. It's just announced late last night that ex-CIA engineer Joshua Schulte has officially been charged with the massive Vault 7 leak that was made to WikiLeaks over a year ago. Now, he was facing other charges as well, which some people are speculating may have been framed. He may have been framed for these additional charges by the deep state, sort of as a way to get him into the courts to take him down for these WikiLeaks leaks that they think that he did. This was a report from Politico. They say former CIA computer engineer Joshua Schulte, he's been indicted on charges he masterminded what appears to be the largest leak of classified information in the spy agency's history. So Schulte was 29 years old. He had been charged in a new grand jury indictment with providing WikiLeaks with a massive trove of U.S. government hacking tools that the online publisher posted in March 2017. People probably remember the leak from back then. Now, WikiLeaks did say that they were planning for more Vault 7 releases, which at some point they stopped coming. So people were expecting that there was more information from this Vault 7 release, that Schulte was central in leaking to WikiLeaks. So we may not have gotten all of the information that Josh Schulte had. The CIA, they revealed Schulte had also been facing charges on child pornography. He'd been facing child pornography charges as well in federal court in New York. And now this is very closely related to some of the information that he actually released about the types of technology that the CIA has and the deep state has, which suggests that he could have possibly been framed for these other charges. Just to finish off on what they say here, they say the indictment was broadened. Afterward, the case had been broadened to accuse him of illegally gathering classified information, damaging CIA computers, lying to investigators, and numerous other offenses. So these original charges may have been a way to set him up to take him down for these WikiLeaks charges. Now, one of the reasons that people are going along with this theory is the fact that one of the things that Joshua Schulte himself revealed in this leak is the CIA's capability to carry out false flag cyber attacks. When you combine this with other info that had been given to the mainstream media, sort of the narrative that was pushed by the mainstream media that was promoted by the deep state about Russia and their alleged hacking capabilities, it seems that the deep state might be using Russia as a scapegoat for their own actions in planting and stealing info for their own political opponents. Joshua Schulte would be one of these people in this case. Just look at this blog article from last year when Vault 7 was released. They're talking about this capability. These false flag cyber attacks that the CIA is capable of was revealed in the Vault 7 release that was released by Joshua Schulte, who's facing these charges right now. They said back last year, others online were saying this capability, they say, destroys the concept of evidence. The CIA can carry out a cyber attack or steal information and leave a fingerprint, so to speak, of the country or person it wants blamed. If the CIA can leave the fingerprint of an innocent party, we must assume the CIA can also put secret documents or something like child pornography on a person's computer as well. Because of the CIA's capability, henceforth, we cannot know if any evidence presented in any trial against a defendant is real or faked. Seems like there is a reason that they would want to potentially fake info. In this case, the CIA. Look at this article from the Daily Mail, where you have the director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. He's telling the media to expect that Russia might be planting child pornography on American computers. It's according to the top U.S. spy chief, James Clapper. He's telling the mainstream media that. And this, again, was just before it had been released that was a common tactic that the CIA itself used. Here's another article from RT where they point out that this is a tactic that the CIA uses. They cite a malware expert who says that the fingerprint switch leak shows that past attacks blamed on Russia and China are actually the work of the CIA. Also, another relevant piece of the Vault 7 release involves the Marble framework, uh, part of one of these series of releases that was part of Vault 7 from the 31st of March, 2017. They said that WikiLeaks released at the time Vault 7 Marble, which included 676 source code files for the CIA's secret anti-forensic Marble framework. The Marble is used to hamper forensic investigators and antivirus companies from attributing viruses, Trojans, and hacking attacks to the CIA. So helping them cover for the exact hacking and planting potentially of this exact sort of evidence. So people are already skeptical of the CIA and the deep state, but this shows that they were planning and had planned these sort of technology to take down enemies like Schulte. So people definitely questioning those original charges against Schulte. Look at the new Newsweek article. What they are saying, they point out some comments from another attorney. So, quote, it says, as alleged, Schulte utterly betrayed this nation and downright violated his victims. As an employee of the CIA, Schulte took an oath to protect this country, but he blatantly endangered it by the transmission of classified information. According to the assistant director in charge, William F. Sweeney of the FBI's New York field office, said this in a statement. Another quote reads, as the evidence is flushed out, it will become clear that Mr. Schulte is hardly the villain the government makes him out to be. That was a response from, I believe, his attorney. They also say the FBI they talk about the FBI raid of Schulte's New York apartment in March 2017. There is another statement that we can look at from Schulte. He describes in detail the FBI raid, the original raid against him. This was the month of the Vault 7 leak. They seized at the time multiple computers, servers, and other portable electronic storage devices, including Schulte's personal desktop computer. This according to the Department of Justice. On that personal computer, investigators say that they found over 10,000 images and videos of child pornography. After working through multiple layers of password protection, they also found chat logs in which Schulte discussed with others the receipt and sharing of these images and Google searches for indecent images. He was arrested in August 2017. Schulte is also facing felony charges of sexual assault in Virginia after images of him. There was images of him with a woman unconscious found on his cell phone, allegedly. So look at this statement released from Schulte. So this was shared on WikiLeaks a few hours ago. In his own words, alleged CIA Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua A. Schulte describes the FBI raid against him. There's a series of documents. You can just look at the first couple of pages. So this is written by this ex-CIA engineer. Has currently been charged with the Vault 7 leak. Joshua Schulte wrote describing this FBI raid. He says, bang, bang, bang. I awoke with a start. It's still dark outside and my phone reads 5:30. I jump up and just as I reach out for my apartment door, I see the lock unlock, the door open, and immediately 10 to 12 men in bulletproof vests, guns, and siege equipment burst into my apartment and throw me against the wall. Freeze, they yell. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. It's safe to say that I'm no longer groggy, nor do I remember anything about the pleasant dream I most likely had before I was awoken. I feel the adrenaline shoot through my body and I'm more alert than I've ever been as I survey the intruders in my apartment. I obey every command. They search my apartment hoping to find some contraband. Eventually, one of them grabs clothes from my closet and tells me to get dressed. I am not permitted to use my cell phone or do anything except dress. They congratulate each other as they lead me to their vehicles outside. Cold, crisp morning, no one around to witness the unusual scene taking place before me. As I sit in the back of the car, I wonder the true necessity of breaking into someone's residence in the early morning with armed agents who know full well that I am not a threat. Perhaps it's just protocol, he says, I think sarcastically. He goes on, he says, or is there some more nefarious purpose, such as an attempt at intimidation? Somehow I doubt Paul Manafort or any wealthy individual suspected of a crime is treated this way. Once we reach our destination, the agents lead me around like a prized dog. They beam with pride as if I were a huge accomplishment. I'm fingerprinted and my picture is taken several times throughout the morning, but eventually I'm turned over to the U.S. Marshals at the courthouse. The Marshals have a stricter protocol, and in addition to handcuffs, affixed to a chain around my waist to keep my hands in front of me. My ankles are also uncomfortably cuffed as well. The ankle cuffs make it extremely difficult to walk forward, and I do so at a slow pace. I'm led to what looks like a holding area with several cells the size of a small room. The marshals remove my handcuffs but leave the ankle shackles as they direct me into one of the cells with several other arrestees. It's still relatively early, but everyone just keeps to themselves. They are long concrete benches that are about as comfortable to sit on as they look. The first few people grab rolls of toilet paper from the toilet at the back of the cell, use them as pillows as they lay across the benches, but eventually the room starts to fill up, so they sit up. The best position, though, is leaning up against the bars at the front of the cell. Regardless, the entire room is freezing as large AC units near the back blow at full strength, and everyone in the cell either has their hands inside their shirt or are doing something to try not to freeze to death. Large stretches of time pass as many people come and go. There's no clock or any schedule that we are told, so everyone just sits patiently waiting their turn. If you are wealthy, then your attorney will meet with you to discuss the charges and game plan, but if not, you are assigned a public defender who you typically won't meet until the first appearance. Eventually, it's my turn, and I'm led out there before the judge. It says, for most people, this is the first time the official complaint is presented before you. Note that the complaint and all evidence against you are obviously not shared with you beforehand. You are not entitled to discovery until after your arraignment. The government does not provide evidence for you, nor does your attorney. The point here is you don't start off on an even footing at all in your first appearance. There's a quote saying the purpose of this proceeding is to inform you of certain rights that you have, to inform you of the charges against you, to consider whether counsel should be appointed for you, and to decide under what conditions, if any, you should be released. You have the right to remain silent. You are not required to make any statements. Even if you have made any statements to the authorities, you need not make any further statements. Anything you do say can be used against you. You have the right to be released either conditionally or unconditionally pending trial, unless I find that there are no conditions or combination of conditions that would reasonably assure you presence in court and the safety of the community. You have the right to be represented by counsel during all court proceedings, including this one, and during all questioning by authorities. If you cannot afford an attorney, I will appoint one to represent you. So that's what he was told. The purpose of your first real hearing, he says, is to determine bail in accordance to the 8th Amendment. Another quote, the quote from the amendment says, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Therefore, he says, I am here to determine what bail will be set that I must pay to assure the court that I will show up to future court dates. This very concept seems odd. The notion that I must pay money or go to prison. And there's an added stipulation, the Bail Reform Act, 1984, which legalized pretrial detention of the accused on the basis of flight risk or, quote, a danger to society for the first time in the history of the country. This strange concept, which clearly seems at odds with the presumption of innocence, was only introduced in the country 30 years ago. He highlights this. The section of his statement says somehow this law was determined to be consistent with the 8th Amendment, and bail set at infinity was in fact not excessive at all. The law was determined consistent with the 5th Amendment and due process clause, overruling the Court of Appeals who ruled it categorically prohibited pretrial detention. The Supreme Court ruled that government's regulatory interest in community safety can, in appropriate circumstances, outweigh an individual's liberty. interest. The law was determined consistent with the Sixth Amendment guarantee of a right to a fair trial. Just to close the first section, and again, if you want to go to WikiLeaks Twitter account, they have there's 7 documents. It's a pretty long statement from Joshua Schulte, but just describing the original raid against him. The first page closes off, or the first set of pages closes off saying, "Why would I worry, though? I am granted a presumption of innocence by law and due process through the Bill of Rights. Today is the first time I have ever seen these charges or have ever been charged with this before." Another quote says, "The government seeks detention and believes the defendant is both a flight risk and danger to society." At that point, he said his stomach drops. "The crime I am charged with is in fact a non-violent, victimless crime. However, it is argued that since I am accused of a crime, then it is possible that I would commit violent crimes." So they're talking about a theoretical crime is the reason that they were holding him there. At that point, they said it is argued that after being accused of a crime, then it is much more likely that if I am allowed to leave court, then I will either attempt to flee the country without a passport, or I will immediately commence violence on others. The bail argument continues for hours, but it seems like days. How can this be happening? How can a judge actually sit there mulling over sending me to prison? Please tell me a presumption of innocence really does exist and isn't just some buzzword thrown around in legal arguments without any true meaning. Finally, the judge quiets both sides and states that he made a decision. The judge states that the evidence presented by the government in the complaint is so strong, and that since my lawyer could not adequately rebut their argument on dangerousness, his viewpoint is that there is no way I am innocent. I am immediately remanded. My case begins with a guilty verdict and denial of civil rights, of all civil rights. That's how his case begins, he explains. I would go through the full statement, but again, it's probably over 25 pages or so. Probably is a worthwhile read. You can find that on the Twitter account for WikiLeaks. I have a link to the article that I first looked at in the description of this video. I also have a link to my Patreon page, patreon.com/realityreader. Thank you, everybody that has donated over there. A few dollars makes a huge difference. I have a link in the description. Again, patreon.com/realityreader. Finally, maybe we could just look at a few closing comments. These are a couple comments from Reddit that I thought could be relevant. It's actually a couple good comments on the conspiracy forum for Reddit. They're talking about this case. They link to the same Politico article that we looked at, but just looking at a few of the top comments, they say, one of them reads, "It's the best way to discredit this guy," planting this evidence on him. I think they're talking about, they said that's the best way to discredit him, as well as ensure his death in jail and prison. That might be what they're trying to do, since most prisoners readily attack anyone that is involved with child pornography, rape, sexual assault, etc. Somebody else says that this guy was taking the ultimate risk by leaking CIA info. So of course he leaves, sarcastically, he's saying it's unbelievable really that he would leave so much evidence that he has this child pornography, allegedly, that's what the deep state is saying, on this on his hard drive. He says that it makes total sense and sounds absolutely legit. Again, sarcastically, I have no further questions, the commenter says. They said what makes it really odd is that if you read through the Vault 7 documents, they're pointing out the same thing that I opened the video with. If you look at the Vault 7 documents that Joshua himself released, or leaked to WikiLeaks, who then released, you can see in those documents a section detailing how the hacking tools that he himself is accused of leaking can be used to plant exactly this kind of evidence on a target computer. And as I pointed out in those other mainstream media articles that were based off other statements from deep state figures, plans like this, it seems like the CIA developed these tools and then came up with this excuse that if they got caught for it, they can blame China and Russia. And that was a narrative that the mainstream media has been pushing for the last several months as well. I think there's a lot of suspicious things going on with this story. I definitely I will follow up as more info comes out, as it continues to develop. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Once more, I am on Patreon, patreon.com/realityreader. Thank you. All the donors over there makes a huge difference. I will follow up soon. Thanks again.